Thanks everybody for being here. We're going to get started in a few minutes, just letting a couple more people join. Nice. All right.
Thank you so much, Ben, for doing this. We really, really
All right,
appreciate
everybody,
it.
thank you for joining me today. I am going to get going and feel free to jump in with any questions along the way. Happy to be stopped. This should be an interactive session. And if you're joining us from Mexico, hola. All right. So,
Hola, saludos desde México.
oh, nice. All right, I'm going to get started. So just to set some expectations for today, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself and then what you'll be learning today in preparation for your pitch competition. So to start off about me, my name is Ben Hokanson. I work in a few different roles related to startups in El Paso's ecosystem. I am a venture analyst at Audaz Capital, where I invest in early stage tech companies. I am a consultant at STTE Foundation, which is an incubator for startups based in El Paso. We help companies from El Paso scale to other regions. And lastly, I am a strategic consultant at UTEP's Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce, where I focus on entrepreneurial initiatives and teaching, like today. Just to give you a sense of things I've done in the past, I studied international and public affairs and entrepreneurship at Brown University. I've worked at Goldman Sachs in finance in New York. I've spent a couple of the past years advising startups at Harvard Business School, and I continue doing freelance consulting on the side for different clients. To give you a sense of what you're going to be learning today, we're going to go over just generally investor landscapes so that you have a context of when you're fundraising, who might the audiences be, and what would they be looking for. essential pitch deck components that win funding. So this will help you prepare for the 5-minute pitch that you hopefully get to do in this competition. I'll give you a framework for a 60-second elevator pitch, which you can use during the competition as well. And we're also going to have a real world example of a pitch from a startup that I invested in over the summer. So moving into decoding the investor ecosystem. Understanding your audience is crucial for a successful pitch. There are different types of investors that look for different criteria when they're making their decisions on who to work with or invest in. So I want to give you a sense of a few of the main types of sources of private capital first, starting with angel investors, venture capitalists, and private equity investors. Angel investors are individual accredited investors using their personal funds and normally investing between $10,000 to $500,000 in super early stages of a company. Oftentimes, angels will come in before a company is generating revenue, so they're looking for strong teams and market opportunities over anything else. Now, moving into a bit later stage and a bit larger is venture capitalists. Venture capitalists still come in pretty early, but they're looking for high growth potential, scalable business models, strong teams that have demonstrated traction or some sort of proof of the viability of their business. They typically make investments in the size from 1 million to even 50 million and more, depending on the type of industry and fund that it is. They focus on market size and exit potential, meaning they're looking for the opportunities that can provide the most financial return at the end when the investment engagement is completed. Lastly, private equity. For this slide, private equity is much larger stage. So these sorts of firms will target established revenue generating businesses, invest 5 million or more into different companies, and they look for major ownership stakes, and then to swoop in and bring in operational improvements or strategic growth opportunities to make a big financial return. The presentation I'll focus on today will focus mostly on how to pitch to a venture capitalist, but the frameworks I'm sharing are going to be useful for everything you're doing in this pitch competition. And when you think of your judge audience, which will be a mix of founders, investors, and other ecosystem members, just think of these sorts of criteria and how you can adapt them to make them generally appealing to all of those types of people. Before I give you a framework on how to build your pitch deck, I just wanted to point to a couple other sources of funding. Just it's worth being aware of this. Much later stage than I was talking in the previous slide, institutional investors sometimes come in. So this could be banks, insurance companies, or pension funds. They're investing $10 million or more in later stage companies. And the priority here is stable returns, strong governance, and risk mitigation. Large companies or pension funds are managing the personal livelihood of people who are retiring. So they don't want to mess up at all. They're looking for the least risky but highest return option they can find often. There's also grants and government funding, and this is important to note because you can actually get a lot of non-dilutive funding, which means non-dilutive funding is funding that you get where you don't have to give any equity in your company in exchange for it. This is ideal for research-heavy, deep tech, or socially impactful startups that can align with applications for things like small business investment research grants or programs within local economic development funds. And the process to get this funding is different. You're not necessarily going to be pitching the way we're talking about today. Oftentimes, it might be a detailed application, but just want you to be aware of it as an option in your journey as an entrepreneur. Let me pause before I move into slide deck format. Are there any questions on the investor landscape that I just explained? All right. Again, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to just chime in. Happy to pause and have a quick discussion. But we'll move on. So I'm going to tell you in a few different slides the different key components of a winning pitch deck, starting with how to set up a solid pitch. A compelling pitch deck will tell a cohesive story that is going to guide investors through your vision, validate the opportunity, and demonstrate execution capability from your team. And each slide is going to have a specific goal or purpose in that presentation. So let's start with the first 4 slides. Number 1 would be a hook slide. In the hook slide, your goal is to immediately get the attention of your audience with an interesting, compelling statement, a surprising statistic, or a bold vision that makes investors eager to move forward and learn more. Next, you want to move into your problem definition slide. With a problem definition slide, you want to basically leave the person hearing it understanding exactly the way you're trying to solve the problem you've identified. Rather, let me clarify a bit. You want the problem itself to be really understandable so that the investor is with you on the same page throughout. So focus on the ease of understanding this portion and this slide. Make sure you're clearly articulating the pain point you're solving, make it relatable, and quantify the impact of your target market. And a pro tip here is actually to use a statistic that would excite investors. So if you can point to the fact that over 50% of people in the world struggle with XYZ issue, or 80% of the hundreds of people you've spoken to agree that this is a problem for them. Any sort of statistic like that is going to bring some more credibility and validation already to your pitch early on. Moving on, next, once you've laid out the problem, you want to lay out the solution. So how you're solving it. This is when you basically demonstrate your approach to uniquely addressing the problem. In this slide, I highly recommend you show as much as possible rather than telling about it. What does this mean? If we move into some tips for the solution presentation, oftentimes a really effective tool can be using a demo. So this could be a live demo or a recorded demo where essentially you're showing your product and how it's supposed to work and explaining the user journey with the actual prototype itself. So if you're able to build a prototype or mock version of the ultimate product you're trying to pitch in this competition, that would be a great benefit. And I want to make it clear too, it doesn't have to be a functioning app or something like that. It could even be screenshots of what your dashboard is going to look like when it launches. Just think of a way to make it easy, fast.
¿Está temprano? ¡Oh, cabrón!
Sounds good.
No me preparé, güey. Nada, no mames.
Hey, Jaime. How are you doing?
Can you mute yourself?
All right, thanks. So yeah, use live recorded demos, pictures. Think about personifying the problem, and you can even use similes here. So when I say use a simile, you could think of quick phrases to compare your company to other companies that will make it easier to understand. So let's say you're doing a app that matches people who are trying to get jobs to employers. You could say a metaphor or simile where your app is like Tinder for job searching. And that really makes it easy to understand for the audience. So that's the solution presentation. The next important slide to include would be the market opportunity. The market opportunity is when you present the TAM, SAM, and SOM of your business. And to define those terms, the TAM is your total addressable market. So how big could this possibly get, this business? It could be anything from the entirety of the population of Earth to just the population of a single country or even a single city. SAM is the size of your addressable market. So of the total addressable market, what is the size of your intended market that you're going to be targeting? And SOM is the size of the obtainable market. So again, you go from TAM, which is the biggest view possible, to SAM, a section of that large view. And now SOM, the size of your obtainable market, is what of the SAM can you realistically actually accomplish through your business? So oftentimes the SOM might be a really small percentage of a very large number. TAMs can be upwards of hundreds of billions of dollars. SAMs can be hundreds of millions, and SOMs could still be millions because, 2% of billions of dollars is going to be a lot of money. So here you want to talk about also growth trends as well. So if you can talk about the market growing in the future, what its projections are, and specifically speak to your specific segment of that market, that's a really good thing to do here in this slide as well. A couple pro tips on the market opportunity slide. Visuals are super important here. So use things like graphs or images, whatever you need, but make sure they're easy to read. You want your slide deck to support what you're saying, not distract from it. You want the whole pitch to be one narrative. So make sure it's complementary and not so complex that someone has to stop listening to you just to understand a graph that you're displaying. These are the first 4 essential slides of a winning pitch deck. I'm going to move on now to how to close the deal. So now that you've set up the pitch with that great start, these are the last 4 that you want to include to make sure people know what they need to know in order to evaluate your business comprehensively. Starting with the business model. In the business model slide, you've already given your solution, so we know what you do. But in the business model, you want to explain how it actually works. So how do you make money? Who are you charging? Who's paying what? How does that actually go into your revenue? So include things like pricing strategy, revenue streams, or unit economics. And the key here is that investors or judges are wanting to see a clear path to profitability, because there's a lot of great ideas out there, but we're, as evaluators of startups, looking for ideas that can bring in revenue and grow over time. Moving on, you want to talk about traction and validation after that. So this could look different depending on what stage your company is in. If you're super early, your traction might not be strong. Traction is kind of the proof that people are actually using your business. Validation is the proof that people are interested in solving the problem. So yeah, if you're very early on, you might focus more on validation. If you're later, you could have some traction. But essentially, to break it down, what you want to do here is provide concrete evidence of market demand. So this could be user growth. It could be any revenue milestones you've had in your business. It could be any partnerships you've established with other corporations or organizations. Or it could be pilot programs and a number of other things. You want to highlight any key investors or advisors or team members if that is relevant right now. Don't mention any co-founders, that'll come later in the team slide, but any external players who are very credible in the space that you're working in and are on board with you is worth mentioning at this point. And just know that numbers speak louder than projections. So an investor is going to be much more interested in what you've actually done than what you say you can do, because a lot of people have a lot of ambition. But as investors and judges, we're trying to filter out who is actually able to convert on the opportunities that they're identifying. Some pro tips here. The 3 stats that I at least always look for when I'm evaluating founders pitching would be LTV, CAC, and churn. To define those, LTV is the lifetime value. So that means when you get a customer, what's the amount of money you're going to get from that customer in the entire time that they ever use your business. CAC is customer acquisition cost. So how much money does it take to actually get a customer in through advertising, recruiting, anything else like that. Then churn is what percentage of your customers are not using your service anymore. So if a customer subscribes for 1 month and then unsubscribes, that customer would contribute to your churn rate. So what you want is a high LTV CAC ratio, high lifetime value to low CAC, and you want low churn. Those are some great combinations that indicate a potentially successful business. Also here, if you have any notable customers, it could be a local business that people will be familiar with, or it could be a large corporation. It's worth mentioning that here as well to contextualize who's actually using your business. Moving on to team credibility. After you've proven the traction and validation of your business, now you want to assert why you are a part of leading or a part of the right team to actually execute. This slide establishes your team's brand. So it's super, super important to make sure it's clean, highly relevant, speaks to experience that is relevant, complementary skills, and any previous successes that your team has had. And just know that in early stage businesses, investors oftentimes are betting on people as much or more than they're betting on ideas. They expect ideas to change along the way and are understanding of that. So this is your chance to really show who you are and why someone should invest in you personally. A pro tip is use logos here. If you've worked in certain companies or studied in schools, you can always provide your logos to have a quick way to signal where you're affiliated. But don't overdo it. You don't want a super busy team slide because it can be overwhelming and you start to lose the point of the team being solid because investors are distracted by you trying to fit in too much information into a single slide. That's team credibility. Now, the final slide in the template I'm sharing is the ask. So the ask is really, what are you trying to do? If you're pitching to a VC investor, the ask would be the funding amount, how you're going to use the funds, the timeline in which you're trying to get the funds and deploy them. And what you want to do here is be extremely clear with what investors will get in return for their investment and the expected milestones they should see in the future. This is a slide that you can easily tailor to the pitch competition. If there's a prize that you're trying to speak to or any other benefit from winning a pitch competition, you can easily integrate that into the ask. So, you're asking judges and whatnot to support you, but think about the use of funds, for example, or the impacts that the winning of a competition will have on your business. That's something you can incorporate into that narrative of the ask. These 8 slides I just shared are a template that I am of the opinion that should always be included in your slide deck. Now, I did want to give you an optional bonus slide as well. So a popular type of slide to include in a pitch deck would be a competitor slide. And what a competitor slide does is it shows what features your business, app, website, whatever it is, provides, how they're comprehensive, while at the same time as showing your biggest competitors and how they stack up against you. So most people do it in the way that I'm displaying right here by having a chart where you put checkpoints next to key features that you want to highlight of your business. And as you go through the competitors, you remove the checkpoints where they're missing. So as you see, Monday.com in this example is the strongest competitor, but they're still only providing 50% of the features that Michamba is highlighting here. And these are ways to show why someone would want to use your business over the solutions that already exist in the market. My tips for this slide, there might be a lot of competitors in your industry, but who knows if the investors or audience is going to even know what they are. So rather than focusing on the amount of competitors, I'd keep it simple, use a few key ones, and really focus on showing your competitive advantage. So whatever are the most compelling or exciting features of your business or stats, that's what you should be highlighting here. And you can always kind of discuss your competitive advantage to more detail, but don't feel like you need to get everything in this one slide. Again, you're probably only going to show it for 30 seconds at the most, and investors aren't going to be looking at it that closely. Lastly here, verbally, you should emphasize specifically why your solution beats all others. And you can even see beyond verbally, the founder in this example used a caption to explain. So current project management softwares are confusing and expensive. That is the key solution that Michamba in this case is bringing. So now that I've given you the different types of slides, I want to leave you with a few just extra tips to take everything to that next level. Starting with having conclusive headers. Having conclusive headers is super important because it's such an easy way to add a lot of professionalism, quality, and value to the content of your slide deck. And when I say conclusive headers, I really am meaning that your header should have a specific meaning and purpose to it, rather than just saying something like competition. So in the example I have here, it's a lot stronger to say revenue grew 300% in 12 months if you're talking about traction in a slide, than to just say revenue growth. And one way I like to explain this trick as well is that the way you can think about it is, by the time someone has looked at your slide deck and it's all done, they should be able to click through all of your slides without you even presenting. And just by reading the headers, they should know exactly what the narrative was at the highest level. There's going to be details that will be missing, of course, because you're not presenting it. But if your headers can almost act like a storybook or chapter heads that give people the context, it's going to be so much easier to follow along, because investors will immediately look at the header, understand the purpose of the slide, the context within the larger narrative, and they'll be able to focus more on the details that you're sharing in your verbal portion of the presentation. Also, less is more here. So when you're making a pitch deck, you don't want too many slides. Try to have maybe 6 to 10 slides, 6 to 8 lines of text maximum, and even 6 or fewer words in the lines of text would be great. You want to use visuals to reinforce key points, not introduce other points, because it should all be complementary with what you're saying anyways. Last tip, supporting materials. The pitch deck is one piece of a large ecosystem of materials needed to do any sort of fundraising. The other types of documents you might need include a one-pager where someone can read about your business quickly, a detailed business plan for someone who wants to do a deep dive and due diligence on your company and investing in it. And one other super helpful supporting material for actually during the pitch this time is appendix slides I wanted to share with you. So when you're giving your pitch and practicing, you can actually anticipate the types of questions you might get from judges or investors. And what you can do is take that anticipation, list out specific questions that you might receive, and actually make slides in advance. So if you get that question, you can quickly flip to it on stage, show the slide, and walk through it to explain the answer. This is a super pro move. It's not necessary, but it does make a big difference. It shows that you're really critically thinking about your business, shows that you're anticipating what's ahead, and it can separate you from other people in a competition who might just be presenting an idea and then talking about it. Lastly, just remember your pitch is, again, a component of a complete fundraising strategy. So while these materials will be different, a pitch deck is different from a one-pager, which is different from a business plan. Together, it should all tell a consistent and compelling story about your business's potential. Now, we know some tips and tricks. We have a format, a template that we can use. But the toughest part of a pitch, no matter how prepared you are, can be the Q&A. And that's because, first off, it can be intimidating to defend your idea. It's always scary to do something like that. And investors or judges are going to be skeptical. So you're going to be faced with that skepticism right off the bat, immediately after sharing your idea, which can be jarring. And you can expect actually to get the hardest questions right away. That's because when you only have 5 minutes to pitch and 5 minutes for Q&A, like in this competition, for example, people want to know the answers to the biggest problems they're identifying right away. And that's how they're going to help themselves with evaluating your business in comparison to others. So while it can be challenging to handle that Q&A, some of the best practices for it would be really approach it with confidence as much as possible. If you don't know the answer to a question as well, you can always follow up. So don't, get flustered or say that you have a lack of knowledge or anything like that. Explain that you appreciate the question, would need some time to follow up, but are happy to do so. And if you can just say something like that along those lines, it's going to be a much cleaner way to move on to the next question without losing any credibility while on stage. Last thing I want to share, and this is a little bit more challenging with this competition, but just you should know, different investors have different theses, different priorities, different criteria. So try to understand as much as possible who you're pitching to. In this competition, you're going to be pitching to investors, founders, ecosystem players. It's going to be a mix. So you want to make it generally appealing to anyone in an entrepreneurship ecosystem. But if you were pitching to a VC firm instead of in this competition, you'd want to look at what does that VC firm invest in? What do they care about? And how can we align and tailor our pitch ever so slightly to be right up their alley? Just important to note for the future. Let me pause here and just see if there are any questions. All right. If no questions, then what I'd like to do is move into an exercise where we are actually going to watch a pitch, a recorded pitch. So like I mentioned, I work at Audaz Capital, which is a venture capital firm. We invest in tech startups. This is the startup that we invested in over the summer. So I'm going to play this video. What I want everyone to do is pay attention to what sorts of tricks worked well, what could have been better. Are there things you're seeing from this presentation that I just gave implemented in this pitch? But really just reflect as you're watching this. Let me know if the volume works. If not, I'll sort that out.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Flores, and I'm the co-founder of Michamba.
Is everyone hearing that? Can someone let me know?
Yes, it's fine.
All right, awesome. I'm going to restart it. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Flores, and I'm the co-founder of Michamba, an AI task manager for teams that operate on WhatsApp. We like to think that if Monday.com and WhatsApp had a beautiful Hispanic baby, it would be us. So before I dive deeper into our solution and the product, I'll tell you a little bit about how it all started. My family migrated from Mexico to the US due to the cartel violence. And at the age of 15, I started working construction. And the construction field is a twofold problem. You have the problem of El Richie, which is what they used to call me when I was young and I was in the field. And you see, Richies are the construction workers that are on the field. They hate using software. Don't ask them to use softwares because they're very complicated. They just want to get their hands dirty. So they want to stay on WhatsApp. But then you have the Rick problem, which is the other side of the problem. Rick is my alter ego, and he's the project manager of the construction site. You see, Rick absolutely hates using WhatsApp. It's very messy, it's clunky, and he's unable to capture the right KPIs and data. So what did we do to solve this? You see, they're not alone. 90% of Latino enterprises still use pen and paper and WhatsApp for their task management. And this costs them over $400 billion annually in operating costs. And, when you ask yourself, what's the most important type of capital? It's not equity, it's not debt, it's human capital. Because if a company does not have control or management over their human capital, they are in huge trouble. And that's why we decided to build the first AI project manager, fully native WhatsApp platform. What does that mean? But for the manager, we built a solution where they really get the structure they deserve. They don't have to be on WhatsApp. They get a nice mobile application or desktop application where they can really have a structured way to manage their employees. But for the employee, we actually built a project management platform on WhatsApp. So it's a win-win because they don't have to learn any new software. They fully stay on the platform that they already know. We like to think that we're meeting the solution where the worker is without any complications. So why are we the right team to do this? You see, we have over 15 years of experience. I started my career in Wall Street at Goldman Sachs in New York. Then I was employee number 6 for a startup called Wealth.com, where we raised over $16 million seed round. Wealth is now $30 million Series A. I was a product owner there, so I learned how to manage engineers. We have an incredible rockstar team of co-founders like Humberto with over 6 years of operational experience in the blue-collar force that we're trying to disrupt. We have Gil, who is a rockstar software engineer, one of the youngest engineers in Goldstream's history, has experience with AI. And we have Esteban with a master's and bachelor's in software engineering from Notre Dame and a lot of startup experience. We are disrupting the field service management focus. That's our target, our ICP. And ultimately, we like to say from ground zero in a construction site to the maintenance of a building, that's what we want to disrupt. We think now is the right time to do it. There's over 200 million Hispanics using WhatsApp. There's actually over 2.5 billion people on WhatsApp worldwide. And there's a lot of companies like Felix Pago, Ponte, and LeadSales who are raising millions of dollars and they're WhatsApp native, but there's no project management software in the space. And that's why we think we're the right ones to penetrate this great opportunity. We ultimately have a lot of groundwork. We have an insane amount of traction. We just launched in January. And over the last 7 months, we are almost reaching that 100K ARR ACV. So we have large clients like Hilton, Pemex, and Repsol, and we're doing really great in that field. Ultimately, it is a huge market. It's a $9.6 billion market opportunity just in the US and Latin America itself. We like to think that we're different from competition because we are WhatsApp native. All of our competitors force their workers to use a complicated UI UX. We want to be the first conversational project management platform. What does this mean is that our biggest thesis is that software as we know it is dead. And with AI, we will be the disruptive platform of the new future of project management. We're raising $2 million at a price, money, pre-money. We want to disrupt the US market. We're growing in the Mexican market, building AI agents, payroll. And at the end of the day, there's only one question left to ask. ¿Estás listo? But
The question gets cut off, but he's like, ¿Estás listo para chambear con nosotros? That's the slogan, which I wanted to point out as well. But that's an example of a pitch that was a winning pitch. We invested in it at Audaz Capital. And over the summer, Mi Chamba raised the 2nd or 3rd largest seed round of any startup in Mexican history. They started in Mexico City, and now they're based in Austin, but they still operate in the US and Latin America. Now that you've seen an example of a successful pitch, can anyone chime in and share an observation? What worked? What could have been better? What do we think? Someone jump in. Going once. Going twice. All right, well, we've got a quiet group, but I can share some insights from the presentation. So something I want to point out is that there was really good conclusive
project manager.
headers. So you see conversational PM. Let me read this. You see field service management focus. Why now? These headers are bringing us through the presentation. They're very specific. They're giving us a sense of what to expect. Something that could have been better, in my opinion, the team slide is a little busy here. You see a lot of text, there's a lot of logos, and they're cool. But there maybe would have been a way to present this where it wouldn't be so distracting when you're trying to read. Lastly, the slogan was great at the end. Having some sort of forward-looking statement, way to excite people about your business is very important. So if you can think of any fun things to incorporate into your pitch, like a slogan like that at the end, or even walk-on music during your pitch, using your demo on stage, any sort of creative aspect will be appreciated by the audience. I'm gonna move on and give you a guide now. So you've seen, all right.
Can
Oh.
I give a quick recommendation based on the presentation that we just saw? I guess slides are meant to be pop out what you're trying to say. And as you pointed out in the slide that there's a lot of information, investors can get lost. And the other thing is to make sure that you're not reading as you're presenting, but that you have memorized and you're able to present without turning either to your computer or to the screen. Maybe it can just help you as a placeholder as where you are in the presentation, but make sure that you're not reading as you're presenting.
Yeah, excellent point. Having even note cards to help you is going to be a disadvantage because it will just be distracting. You want your body, gestures, everything to be confident. You can even look up what a power stance is and practice that when you get ready to give your speech. If you struggle with feeling like you look confident, there are techniques, for example, a power stance that you can use to solve that. Any other comments about the pitch or any other tips of advice from anyone in the room? All right, well, thank you for that one. Anyways, so you've seen an example of how a 5-minute pitch can be successful, what it should look like. But the thing left on the table is, how do you actually get to the point where you're giving that 5-minute pitch? So in this competition, you're going to be presenting in a showcase, having an elevator pitch experience that will hopefully get you to the final pitching phase. If you're talking to an investor, you're going to have to give them an elevator pitch to then get their email, to then schedule a call to give the longer pitch. So an elevator pitch is always going to be relevant. And I wanted to make sure that you had a structured way to give an elevator pitch as well as part of this training. The core components of an elevator pitch would be the problem hook, the solution overview, market validation, and a call to action. So if you give me one moment, I have an example that I'm going to share with you with that comes from an exercise that we do at UTEP. So at UTEP, we have the minors pitch competition, and in the minors pitch competition, you have the opportunity to participate in workshops preparing you. These examples here are from our minors pitch competition. This is an example of an unstructured elevator pitch. I'm going to read it to you. This is for a business idea called Fuel Up, which is a hypothetical idea we use in our exercises that is essentially healthy food on the go, ready to go access while you're on campus, which is a big lack at different universities. Here's the unstructured version. So our idea is basically a food thing for students. You know, people get hungry on campus sometimes. So we thought, why not make something healthier? Fuel Up is like a vending machine, but with better stuff inside. It's kind of like Subway, but faster. Anyway, students could probably use it if they want. That's our idea. So that does explain what the business is, which is helpful, but it could be so much better. So if we take the structure I provided in the previous slide and apply it, we have something like this. Imagine it's finals week. You've been in the library all day and you're starving. The only quick options are greasy fast food or sugary snacks. That's the problem college students face every day, a lack of convenient, healthy food choices. Our solution is Fuel Up, a simple campus-based service that puts nutritious grab-and-go meals in vending machines where students already are, the library, the gym, and student lounges. No lines, no driving, no junk, just quick, affordable fuel for busy students. With Fuel Up, students can eat well without losing time or sacrificing their health. So as you can see, we've basically taken the exact same message here and just tuned it up a little bit to be a bit more structured, easy to follow, and compelling using that format that I shared. All right. Now, that is the majority of the information I will be sharing with you. But what I want to say as well, just some final tips to leave you with. Your next steps to fundraising success. All right. Next steps are going to be perfect your materials. So refine your pitch deck, your elevator pitch, supporting documents using today's insights. You can greatly benefit from these tips in your competition experience as well next week. Research your targets. Identify, this is if you're pitching for investment, but in this case, I'll clarify. Research your targets. So try to understand who the judges might be, what sorts of qualities they might be looking for in businesses, and try to tailor as much of what you're saying to each individual judge if possible. This might be a little tricky depending on the information you're able to access and how soon before the competition you can access it. But do your best here to speak to your judges' priorities. Lastly, practice relentlessly. You should rehearse your pitch until your presentation flows naturally. Prepare for tough questions and practice pivoting when conversations take unexpected turns. So kind of back to what we talked about with how to follow up when you don't know the answer to a question. Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining me today during Pitch Lab. The rest of the time we can use for any questions. I'll keep the call open. So if anybody would like to ask anything, please feel free to chime in. And if not, also feel free to have a great weekend.
I have a request. Would it be possible to get a copy of your presentation so we can distribute it with students?
Absolutely. Thanks for reminding me of that, Kathleen. I actually meant to send a PDF version of this to everybody. So I will be doing that.
Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it. I think it's an amazing presentation and I think it has a lot of food for thought.
Thank you.
And
Gracias, Jesus.
And I guess not only presenting for this, but presenting in general. When we're presenting to our bosses or we're presenting in the class, just make sure that your slides are not cluttered and have like key information to pop out your message. So I think that it's great advice. Thank you so much, Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Does anybody have? They're asking that if in the presentation there would be the example of the pitch.
Yeah, the PDF has a link to the recording that I shared.
Perfect, thank you.
Jacqueline? Your hand is raised. Feel free to ask your question.
Jacqueline, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Just give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
Sorry. My question was something that happens to me frequently when I'm presenting and doing like a slideshow is that I try to have like less text and more images. But something that I think often when I do is that my presentation is less professional and more like, I don't know how to say, like childish. And I don't know, you have a tip for me because I don't know how to use less text without being less professional?
That's a good question. So I would say the headers here are gonna be key. So already in your header, you can see my header right here. It says your next steps to fundraising. If you can have the conclusive headers that give people an idea of what to look for, then you can use all sorts of visuals and just talk about your presentation. I've actually in the past done presentations where I have maybe like 3 bullet points, but I have conclusive headers and good imagery along the way. And I'm able to use my presence as a presenter to command attention and share verbally the information I'm trying to. So I would say beyond simple things like maybe be a bit more selective with the types of graphics you use, like maybe don't use a ton of comic stuff unless that's relevant to your branding and your business. Yeah, the headers can be super helpful there. Does that help, Jacqueline?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Of course. ¿Alguien más?
Anybody else? Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, so much, Ben. So for next week, remember that we are to meet at 9 at UTEP at the Tomás Riviera Conference Center. You guys will have 2 hours to present your ideas in a showcase format. And then judges will rate your presentations. And then the 8 best teams will be able to pitch in front of the entire audience, and we will have different set of judges. So we will have a combination of faculty and industry in the morning and mostly industry in the afternoon. So this is an opportunity for you to shine. So make sure that you have your presentation ready. I think that Ben's format is amazing. So following something like that will give you more order, and it will make it easier for the judges to understand what you're trying to showcase in your pitches. Okay, so let's have fun next week. It'll be great to meet everybody and look forward to seeing what you have come up with. So good luck and see you guys next week at 9 a.m. at UTEP. If you have any questions or any issues, please contact a organizer within your school, and I will make sure to send everybody Ben's presentation. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. And good luck, everyone. Excited to see you all at UTEP as well, hopefully.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye. Adriana, are you still there?